Please rise. Salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pardon?
Would you ask everyone to sign in the back?
Has everybody signed in? I'm going to call the roll for those present. I'm Neil MacGyver.
Patrice Scott.
Howard Burnham.
Freeman Plummer.
We're going to...
Pardon?
I didn't hear him.
I'll get $15 if I can.
Okay, the minutes. Do you have the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes, I do. I did send them out in the packages. Did everyone bring their minutes?
I didn't get minutes in mine.
You did?
No.
Okay.
Does it say that?
Yeah. Actually, we're kind of going out of order here, according to the agenda. Do you have an agenda?
We
Is that in the packet?
decided to adopt the minutes first, then have the election of officers.
Oh, okay. Was I not? Okay. We need to state that in the record, though, so that it's noted in the minutes that we changed the agenda. So we switched?
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
No, that's right. I need a copy.
Okay, I have a copy.
Mine were on the last page.
I'm sorry.
It's a very brief minutes. Very brief minutes
Yeah.
because it was our work session and it was just one page.
Thank you.
Freeman, do you have a set? You're all
Yeah, we'll
set?
share with him. I can read it right here.
Okay.
Better read it. I see no problem with these minutes, therefore I make a motion we accept them.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Now we're going to elect I've been the interim chairman, and this is only our second meeting since town meeting.
I'm sorry, we actually have two items under adoption of minutes. Yeah, this is just the December 7th, 2010 minutes. I picked up a clerical error on them, and it is just a matter of public record, and it was just an error in who was here and who was not here. So it lists, let me see, can't even read my own writing. It lists, oh, this is the corrected one, okay. Dick Piper was actually listed in these December 7th, 2010 minutes, and the minutes went ahead and were approved by that board at that time. He had actually resigned at the point. The gal that was transcribing the minutes didn't pick up on the error, and then later on, we approved it. So what I would like to do, make a suggestion to the chair that he make a motion to rescind the approval of the December 7th, 2010 minutes, and then make a motion, you know, and then go through the motion thing, and then make another motion to approve them as corrected, and then the record will be corrected.
Mr. Chairman, could I say I'd be concerned about that? Sharon, simply, were you both here for those minutes? And Neil, were you all here?
I was here.
I was here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so three. I'd have to abstain. I was just concerned about the quorum.
Right.
So, okay, as long as we have 3 members that were here, that would be appropriate.
This is just a clerical error, but technically speaking, to change the minutes, you've got to rescind the approval on December 7th, 2010, and then we'll start over again, and I'll make the correction for the record.
Okay, and then I just say, for the record, I'll have to abstain because I wasn't a member.
Okay.
Okay? So that means the movement and motion and second need to come from the 3 members that were here.
I would so move.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, if I may have...
Minutes are corrected.
No, we've rescinded the first
Rescinded.
correction. Now I need another motion
Another
to
motion.
accept the corrected minutes of December 7th, 2010. Please.
Motion, call for a motion.
I move we accept as corrected the December
Thank you.
meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, I'm sorry, now you may proceed.
Going to call for election of officers. And actually, my term expired June 30th.
We just haven't met,
And
so... yeah.
we need a new chairman and new vice chairman. And I'm open for a nomination for chairman.
Somebody,
I nominate Patricia Scott, chairman, Neil for vice chairman.
Second
Can
it.
we do that in one motion?
sure, yeah, you can present the slate of nominees if that's acceptable to
Second it.
So we have a motion for Patrice to be chairman and myself to serve as vice chairman, and it's seconded by Freeman Plummer. And the motion's by Howard Burnham.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Okay, now we can proceed. Okay, chairman votes last, right?
Okay.
All right.
You see how she grabbed that?
First thing I want to do... I know. It's the first
about
thing I want to
power.
do is thank Neil for serving as interim chairman, and just to let the public know that there hasn't been a lot of activity on our zoning board, and that we had to reconstitute the board, and we are working on new procedures. So we hope that that's all going to be behind us, and we'll be able to proceed very smoothly. And we have lost a member due to resignations. Right, we're down 1 member right now, so if there's anybody in the public that's interested in serving on the zoning board, you're welcome to submit a letter of interest to the selectmen. And thank you for bearing with us. Now I believe it's time to open the public hearing on case number 107-036, GDA 10-411. It's a request for a special exception to construct an accessory building in the side setback of property located at 6 Smith Street in the single-family residential zone. John Lockley is the applicant. Well, John, would you like to come forward, present your case?
You want to get the gallows, let me get.
Sure, that's fine, John, whatever.
Probably don't need that. It's fairly straightforward in my mind. What I want to do is create a 2-bay garage where I can park my 2 work vehicles without removing any old maple trees. My house is situated such that there's an existing drive that goes beside it where the previous owner had parked an RV, and I use that space to park my work trucks. What I'd like to do is construct a barn or a garage that would house those vehicles and miscellaneous tools and such. Basically clean up the yard. And I need the setback easement, so to speak, to get it so I can drive both vehicles straight in without taking down any old trees.
Do you have a schematic? You all have a schematic?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Help refer to what John was speaking to. Madam Chair, I need to give the applicant this. This came in, this is from one of the abutters, Mrs. Holt. This just came in yesterday and I was out, but she's not going to be here. She did submit that as a letter to the board, and
I expect the board will be asking those questions, so I just
Oh,
want to
okay.
give you a heads up.
Thank you.
Okay, would any board members like to ask any questions?
I have a couple of questions. The building's 24 by 24 square that you propose. Is the gable end going to be facing the street? Or
Yes.
So the eaves would be on the sideline?
Right.
What type of foundation were you thinking?
I was thinking of a pole barn.
Pole barn.
Yeah, sonotubes or something along those lines.
So you'd probably pour concrete piers
Mhm.
or put PT timber?
It would probably be more of the concrete sonotube, something along those lines.
You said it was a building that you were salvaging, the frame?
Yeah,
What type of frame was it?
it was a post and beam.
So it has sills, right?
I don't know if the sills, I may have to reconstruct the sills, but yeah.
If you're going to put this on the poles, are you just going to have a solid floor inside of it?
No, gravel.
Gravel, okay.
Not going to have any water run into it, correct?
Correct.
You're going to have electricity, though.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe of outside lighting.
I'm not thinking outside lighting, just for inside. I mean, if there were outside lighting, it would just be to light the, a downlight. Just to light the entry.
So you're just saying as you drive in the driveway to the barn, that we're lighting the front,
Right. The gable end that faces the street.
right?
Just so there'd be no outside lighting that would be shining into someone else's windows.
Correct, yeah.
Mr. Markley, could you explain a little bit about this other driveway that's there? Is it a paved driveway?
No, it's a piece of the property that had been leveled off by the previous owner so he could park his RV there. And it's just something that I've been using as well to park my work trucks.
So currently, is it, it's not gravel down or anything?
There's a little bit of gravel in there.
And did you intend to pave it over? Or?
No.
I have another question. The eaves extend 2 feet beyond the foundation. Is the foundation 5 feet from the boundary line?
That was my hope.
So the eaves would be 3 feet from the boundary line? And the peak of the roof is going to be 24 feet high? I'm concerned about snow load and drainage that close to the boundary line on the other person's property. That's my major concern.
And Mr. Markley, could I ask, how did you, I understand you have 3 old maples there, and you were trying to position the barn so that it wouldn't disturb the roots there, and I'm wondering if it's possible to even move your plan a little forward and a little to the left to make it not so many feet in the setback. Did you give any thought to that, or you're saying that because of all the other rocks and the terrain that...
The
This
main
is-
tree of concern is the one that's between the barn and the house. It's this maple here. So, to move it forward, I wouldn't be able to hug it any closer to that tree, I don't think. It's the only other option would be to take that tree out, and that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah, well, I'd like not to see the trees come out, but I was just wondering, just based on the diagram, it looked like maybe it could go a little forward and a little over that. And I'm wondering, did you have anybody help you figure out the site, or it's just by, plain view, that looks like the best site?
I had been going around with stakes and ribbons and trying to figure out the best site for it. That's how I came up with this one.
The proposed side of the building, is that cleared right now? And is where the building is proposed to be, is that cleared right now?
Yeah.
And is it cleared all around these maple trees?
Yes.
Okay.
There's some smaller trees straight back from the barn that I didn't map out. Just the large maples were the ones I was concerned about. I could squeeze it. You can see there's a line of maples behind the barn, away from the Smith Street, and then there's the one maple between the barn and the house. So I could push the barn off of the setback, but then I wouldn't be able to have the two bays to drive straight into.
Would there be enough room to push the building back, say cut those two smaller maple trees down, and have the driveway curve around, and then you could drive in? And stay in the setback area?
You mean behind the other maples, so if it just kept going further back?
Well, push the building back a little bit, maybe get rid of those two smaller maples, and,
The ones that I
Go in
have,
and then
the
go-
ones that I have on the diagram?
Correct. And then I'm concerned with the letter from the abutter about the pine trees.
May I just have a point of clarification? I'm sorry, can we, because I have to transcribe all this later, when we say back towards the rear, when we say move, we're talking laterally to the side. Howard, did you mean
I'm saying move it,
back towards the rear setback or laterally?
I'm saying push it back
Back?
into where those
Okay.
maple trees are.
Away from
And
Smith
then
Street.
move it out of the setback area.
And then move it laterally, so it's a
Yeah,
1-2?
I don't have a problem with the eaves in the setback area, but the building
Okay.
not being in the setback
Well,
area.
I'm just trying to get clarification, thank you.
And I'm just concerned about if it's 10 feet into the setback, which is 5 feet, is that enough room? And what's back there, Larry? Is it, that's all
Right now, it's just where I store my firewood.
So would you be able to mow or shovel if that was necessary?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, the further I push it back, the more I have to shovel. I don't know, there are roughly about in the same line as the two maples behind the barn, opposite side from Smith Street. That's about where Mrs. Holt's pine trees, which are on the line just a little bit over on her side, roughly they start about there and keep going back. There's one up on the corner. I don't think there's another pine along that line.
Is she over here or?
No, she's the one that's abuts the side that I'm trying to
Right.
put the barn near.
How large are the pine trees?
They're probably 3 feet diameter.
Probably 75 years, 80 years old.
Does anybody have any other questions?
In regards to the drainage, if I were to do gutters and redirect the water, would that satisfy that?
I think that would be an acceptable solution. I don't know, I'm thinking about having the snow load go onto the neighbor's property, you only have 3 feet. If you have a metal roof and it all comes off,
Right.
But I think you can put in a design feature for that. You can probably do something to try to prevent that.
Mhm.
I think gutters, and if you could direct the flow.
I could definitely do gutters for the rain. I'm thinking for the snow, I could either do those fences, snow fences that just clip to the roof.
Yeah, I'm sure that you could do something. I'm just concerned about damaging the neighbor's property.
Sure.
Where would you direct the water? Do you have a drainage pattern for the water?
Behind the two maples behind the barn is lower, so I could, the property drops off a little bit, so I could direct it back to my own property.
It would stay on your property, or would it go onto the Donovan's property that already have a water problem on their property?
Well, all of Smith Street has a water problem, but, I mean, it's not, I'm not creating more water with putting a roof on it. So I could redrain it right to my own property.
Then would it stay there?
Yeah.
Okay, and Mr. Mockley, I'd just like to ask, as far as the use of this, I think it's great that you're reconstituting an old barn using recycled materials, and this is simply for storage. You're not intending to use this as, for a workshop, it's not for living space.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's clear. That's what you're asking for, and that's what the special exception would be restricted to. Okay, does anyone have any other questions? We can open it up to the public. I'd like to ask if anybody has anything to say in support of this petition or request for a special exception.
Let's be Brian Murphy. Larry made a very telling point as far as the, sorry, John, whichever you refer to here tonight, runoff, that the snow that's there will not be increased by any location of any buildings. The primary concern, it seems to me, is to keep the water that comes off that roof from going to the nearest abutter, not to follow the path of where it's already flowing. Given that there's no increase, I mean, geometrically, yes, you will have a little bit more. It's not a flat roof, but it's not dramatic. As long as that's channeled away from that area, then I think it's just natural runoff. The other thing is in concern with the roots for the trees. Unfortunately, if Larry wanted to take a backhoe out there and dig a big trench in his backyard, he could cut right through those roots and no one could say a word to him. So I think that little damage would be done by a post hole digger for the sonotubes is a lot smaller than something like that. And I did want to ask him one question, if I may.
Sure.
If you were to just slide it laterally, without angling or anything else, so kind of tucked in between that triangle of trees, would that work for you with a little bit of a jog in the driveway? In other words, not to put it directly behind the 3-foot maple, but you could almost pick up another 5 feet, at least according to the scale here, without getting in too close a proximity to those maples.
Right.
And, you know, without turning it or shifting back, or anything, just a slide to the left.
Yeah. Probably a small slide to the left if I could do 4 feet. Yeah, I see what you're saying. If I moved it over 4 feet, then...
We wouldn't give you a straight approach into the bays, but
I've got, yeah, I could probably do that turn pretty easy.
Yeah. It's just a thought. And given that, I think that the duty of the board would be to then set the location of the closest approach, and anything he can get back from that, he's welcome to do. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
May I have a question of the zoning officer, Mr. Murphy? How much do you think, I know the conversation before was, it was 10 feet, the proposed building site was 10 feet into 15, and then with an eave, it was basically 12 feet into 15. This little scoot over, just for my own notes and stuff, how much of a violation do you think we'd be looking at? still.
As far as,
Well, how much, let me rephrase it, how much setback would be remaining? How much setback would be realized with this scooting
well,
over?
4 feet added to any of those dimensions would give you
So we'll,
another 4 feet on top of the 5 feet.
right, so we'll call it 4 feet.
And the only situation that we have relative to aerial incursion, if you will, there was a question that was brought before the board some time ago concerning a bay window in the setback. And the board's conclusion at that was it didn't increase runoff or redirect the runoff, though just by hanging in space.
It wasn't
It wasn't
impediment.
really viewed as an
Right.
incursion. So with what Larry had been suggesting as far as gutters or water channeling, coupled with that, I think it would be the same net effect as a bay window on the side.
Well, perhaps that's something, the language, the specifics, you and I can hammer out tomorrow when I do the notice of decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Donahue?
Yes, Kate Donahue, Very Small Bar. Mr. Brown, did you mention that my property is already got
It's
water
very wet.
issues?
It's
Yeah, it's
completely
very
wet.
wet. And so I just want to speak to our concern that we're already, I know Smith Street has a water problem, but a lot of that comes through our yard, through Mrs. Holt's side and some of the wetlands that are there. So I just want to express our concern that some of the water runoff from the snow melt and so on and so forth may then trickle in on our other side of our driveway by our shed. So
Man, which property is that? Do you know the lot number?
I think it's 42.
42?
I don't know, I have,
She's actually on Reservoir Road.
I'm on Reservoir Road.
42.
Okay, but I have like this much abutment.
No, that's
so-
fine, I'm just trying to see where you are, so thank you.
Okay, yeah. So I want to thank Mr. Brennan for pointing that out, and I know that specifically that neighborhood area has quite a high water table overall, and a lot of what's going on with bringing in fill and reconfiguring the land is going to affect that runoff. So I'm supporting it, but I also want my neighbor to be very mindful of where all of that excess is going to go. So even if it's on your property, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not leaching somewhere else as well.
Okay, anybody else?
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
This is already the piece of property that I'm looking to put the barn on is already the high spot, so to speak, of the property. It tilts back slightly from Smith Street, but it's much higher than the rest of the backyard. So whatever water falls on that spot, other than getting soaked in,
You will not run into,
well, it will not be an add-on, I don't think, to the water that's traveling, if you will, around my property.
Okay, is there anybody who would like to express an opinion against this application? Mr. Wood?
We got problems. A little history. Smith Street goes like this. On the left side of Smith Street, out behind Mrs. Smith, you know where that is? Out in there's a great big swamp. That swamp comes down, oh, by the way, I'm representing Mrs. Holt. That comes down,
Which lot is that, mister?
what's that?
What lot is that?
Mrs. Holt's lot,
what are the pine trees on?
35?
with the pine trees.
Yes, 35.
Okay.
I think you're talking about Mrs. Smith's.
Which Mrs. Smith are you
Mrs.
referring?
Holt.
Mrs. Holt.
Gets you confused. But anyway, all the water that comes out of that swamp comes down into the house that's directly across from Mrs. Smith's, which is, I don't know who owns it now. But anyway, then it went into a culvert. It comes over and it comes down by Mrs. Holt's yard, down and then into her yard. Well, way back, Charlie Gould put there was a catch basin out in her front yard. He put in some line, well, he had the town put in some lines that go all the way back to Mrs. Holt's property, and a small swamp that goes up and under Reservoir Road, excuse me, Smith Street. So through the years, the pipe that Charlie had the town put in came up through the ground and was sticking 2 or 3 feet up out of the ground. So with her husband and I and the sons, redid it, dug it up, and tried to lower it down so we'd get the water out of there, but we didn't get it low enough. So what the town has to do is come up and put a new line in from the edge of the little swamp by Mrs. Holt's house down to that catch basin. That will take all the water that is produced anywhere in that area right out of there. And the other thing is, no water can possibly get off of his lot onto Mrs. Holt's lot because there's big rocks and everything and trees there, and it would just more or less stay on his lot. Now, Mrs. Holt is not opposed at all to him doing this, but she would like some stipulations, and I didn't hear or I couldn't understand if he's going to have a 4-foot foundation and foundation, or just post holes. Well, that's, the whole thing's going to be on post holes.
That's my plan, is to put it on sanitary.
Well, that shouldn't hurt any of the roots that would cause the trees to come over.
Right.
The other problem is, if one of those pines, for some reason, comes over onto his land and hits the barn, she doesn't want to be responsible for it. And she would like to have something written in that if anything happens with those great big pines, a natural disaster or anything like that, or if Al-Qaeda gets over here and puts a bomb down, you know, one of that stuff can happen, you know. So anyway, if a pine comes over and hits his barn, she doesn't want to be held responsible for repairing the barn or anything else. Is that possible to put that into the condition of him getting this
Mr.
project
Wood, that's not within our purview. That's really a matter of private property owners, and I'm sure Mrs. Holt can speak directly with Mr. Mockley about that. That's an insurance matter, and that's not something the zoning board can really address.
Well, if the building isn't there, and the tree comes over, it's not doing any damage, it will cost any money.
Those trees will reach the house easy.
Huh?
The trees will reach the house easy if they're on that vector.
No.
Yeah, and that's not something we have purview over, so, but I appreciate your representing Mrs. Holt. I will report that you did an able
It's just
job.
$5,000 to come down here and speak. You appreciate it, I appreciate it even more.
Okay, good.
But she has no reason to stop this or anything else. And we're not worried about snow coming over because there's a stone wall there and everything else. Snow isn't off the roof, isn't going to hurt anything. Water isn't going to hurt anything because there's a big, deep area behind where he's going to put it, and that goes all the way over to Kate's house and goes down through. But what we have to do is the neighbors in that whole area have to get together and get the town to put in an adequate drain so this flooding in that area doesn't happen anymore.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
I have a question for Mr. Woods, John. You mentioned that Charlie Gould he managed to get the town to put the drain pipe in, or he put it in himself?
He started out with welding 55-gallon barrels together, and that
He installed this pipe himself.
started. Then it wasn't working out. See, it comes all the way across that field by his house and goes to this little swamp. So then the town came up and put in some plastic, 12-inch plastic, what do they call it?
PVC pipe?
PVC pipe. But the frost brought that right up through. So it raised it all up. So the water couldn't get out of that swamp to go down to the catch basin. So now it's got we put a temporary one in, and to get some of the water down, but still it isn't low enough. So it's got to be done again. But there's no problem with runoff on his place at all, or snow onto Mrs. Holt's. That's no problem at all. In fact, if there's any problem with you people making up a decision, I would suggest you walk the lot. kind of hard to see what's going to happen. But we have no objection to him having it.
I guess I can see the town putting a catch basin next to the road, but I can't see them putting a drainage pipe on private property
But they did this before.
before.
They put it in, and it came up.
Yeah.
After Charlie tried, the town went up there and put it in.
Maybe they'll do it again, huh?
You got it.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Wood. Does anybody have any other questions or wish to address the board at this time? Mr. Mockley, would you like to say anything in addition before we consider?
I think I'm all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Yes, it's, okay, but I put it here just for ease of, right here, and this one, so, okay, thank you. Okay, now we enter the deliberative session of the board in considering this application.
That's in your application, but I just got you an extra page in case you want to write down your opinions for finding of facts. And I'll go with that.
I think, I'm thinking about two considered to this proposal.
Okay, yep, Neil, whatever.
Okay, the first change that I would consider is moving the proposed building 4 feet away from the side boundary, so that the building the foundation actually encroaches 6 feet into the side setback, and the building should have gutters installed on that side to redirect runoff away from the side boundary.
Okay, those are two things that we could add as conditions, I think would be good for the record. So what I'd like the board to do right now is just discuss any concerns we have, and then we'll go through our checklist.
I'd like to see the building 10 feet from the setback.
Okay,
And that would be the eaves of the encroaching another 2 feet into that 10 feet, so there'd be only really 8 feet from the eaves to the setback.
okay, so,
I think there's enough space here to move this building back and have a curved driveway to get the vehicles in the garage.
would the board like to discuss that? I know personally, I was concerned about it being 10 feet into the setback, and I thought if we moved it over a little bit.
No, I'm saying 10 feet back, not into the
You're saying
setback.
you don't want it in the
No,
setback?
I want 10 feet from the setback.
So it'd be, only be 5 feet into the setback.
No, you're 5 feet, right.
Okay. It's 10 feet into the setback right now. You want it 5 feet? So Neil mentioned 4 feet,
I want another...
another foot.
Yeah,
You want 5 feet from the setback?
correct,
5 feet into the setback?
correct. So
Okay.
there's a 10-foot...
Right, so we're basically, we just have a foot difference. I know, right, that Mr. Mockley indicated 4 feet wouldn't be a problem. And just looking at the diagram, I think we can ask that for as a condition, but it's up to the board. Do we want to ask him to do 5 feet or 4 feet?
Madam Chair, I know you know, but just to bring it up, I mean, the board does not have to come to a definitive decision this evening if you feel that, and I'm not advocating that anything take twice as long, but if you feel that you need to look at the site or anything else, or have another opportunity to deliberate after you've seen it, you do have that option, just as
Okay, well, that's good
FYI.
to keep in mind.
So,
Okay, what other concerns do people have? So Howard would like to see it 5 feet in.
Lighting that would only be functional with a motion detector, and would be to go off no more than not more than 10 minutes or something.
Okay. Lighting, motion detector. Okay. I know one of the, my concern is just making sure that the scope of the special exception is for storage purposes and workshop purposes, and that we're not being asked for anything other than that. I think we need to put that in as a condition of approval.
No water to be run to the building.
Right, no plumbing was discussed as workshop area and storage. Okay.
The foundation would be piers or poles.
Piers. Poles. Okay, and then we need to, we definitely want to make sure a drainage, drainage plan is included, acceptable.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Shouldn't the board be considering the findings of fact at this point and not the conditions?
Well, we're just discussing what our concerns are, right? And then we'll go through the, our checklist. So the drainage plan, let's say accepting, acceptable drainage plan, we'd like to see. Okay. All right, and now Sharon has handed out a worksheet for the findings of fact. And are these are what we discuss when we go through our checklist?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's for the actual vote, but the findings of fact can be applied to that. Ordinarily, when you go through with the vote, when everyone, it's a roll vote, everyone should state why they, very concisely and succinctly, why they feel true or false, and then if it's repetitious, you can just say, I agree, I agree.
Right. Okay. All right, well, that's what, I'm just not sure with the, if we go through those findings first, or as we consider the checklist.
We do the findings first because that creates, hopefully creates the rationale for the decision. And the findings a lot of times do come up as a point of reference in the actual vote.
Okay. Well, would anybody like to offer any findings of what we've considered? We could say that first is it's a reconstituted barn.
To be built on poles or piers. Reconstructed on poles or piers.
Will be constructed on poles or piers. We want to say that we find that's an appropriate accessory
Yes.
use for workshop,
Yes.
workshop and storage space. Accessory structure. For workshop and storage.
He also intends to use it as a garage.
Right, for his vehicles. Appropriate structure for vehicles. Do we want to say appropriate, or it's suitable to the neighborhood?
The dimensions.
Suitable structure, vehicle, and in keeping with residential neighborhood.
Foundation is to be 24 by 24.
Okay. elevation, 24 by 24,
With a 24-foot roof peak.
24-foot roof peak.
And 2-foot eaves.
And should we say expected runoff can be addressed by drainage? Okay, any other concerns that, say, about something about lighting? Lighting can be minimized,
Just,
not to...
Down lighting?
Yeah, down lighting. To minimize.
And the timer? Or,
No, those are,
oh,
motion to table.
just leave that out?
I would leave it out.
Yeah, just down light can be used to minimize impact on the image.
Madam Chair, I have planner's finding of facts, which you covered. I would respectfully suggest that number 4 be mentioned, because that's the premise for this request for special exception.
We've got the layout of the land, the placement of mature hardwood trees constrains the flexibility in location. Okay, and we've already, and adopt, most of these have been included in some way, it's aesthetically pleasing. Okay, does anybody have anything else to add?
put a thing about the snow load, if it's got a metal roof sliding off onto the neighbor's property, putting restrictors on the metal roof.
Okay, what is that, how do you want to phrase that?
Well,
Yeah, that would be more condition.
Okay.
I think if they're gonna move that building over, I don't think you'll need to worry about snow load. I don't think it'll ever hit the other property. Metal roof or not.
Okay, so why don't we go through our checklist. Number 1, the proposed use shall be only those allowed in the ordinance by special exception.
True.
Does everyone feel that that is true? And that is, I know I have that written down also on what page of the zoning ordinance that appears that it's appropriate. It's page 16 from the zoning ordinance, Article 3, Section 304, in the table of uses. The specific site is an appropriate location and adequate size for the use.
True.
Everybody agree?
yes.
Okay, number 3, the use as developed will not adversely affect the character of the area in which the proposed use will be located.
True.
Okay, I agree, true. There will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians.
True.
Okay, and I think as we go through these, we should try to articulate why we believe that is true. We feel that in number 4, the driveway is long enough, it's a pre-existing area that it won't be a hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. It's the same track that's been in use for years. It won't change anything. What about for number 3? The use as developed will not adversely affect the character of the area. I feel that that has to do with the aesthetics of the reconstituted barn, that it fits into the residential character and it's an appropriate size. And how about number 2, the specific site is an appropriate location? And I think There is where we can discuss as a condition how, if we can just adjust the placement a little because of the topography of the area. And then the proposed use is allowed. We already addressed that one. Okay, number 5, the use will not place excessive or undue burden on town services and facilities.
True.
True.
True. There will be no plumbing.
No sewer or water hookups.
Right. No increased sewer or water. So we don't have a problem there. Number 6, there would be no significant effect resulting from such use upon the public health, safety, and general welfare of the neighborhood in which the use would be located.
True.
True.
I would say true. And I believe that Mr. Mockley's willingness to work with his neighbors that he's expressed and with the conditions that we can impose, I believe that there will actually be improvements.
Excuse me, I only heard 3 trues, maybe. Okay.
All right, so we've gone through our checklist. Now, we need to vote. And when we vote, we should vote on granting the special exception, and then we should discuss the conditions that we would like to. Or should we set the conditions first?
It depends how comfortable you are at this point with setting conditions. It's up to you.
What does the board feel? That we should vote on the...
I think we should set the conditions first.
Correct. I agree with Mr. McIver.
Okay, so why don't we look back at some of the conditions. And then while we discuss these conditions, then I'll be looking for a motion from the board member to approve special exception based on the following conditions.
Okay.
Okay. So we discussed being able to move the building over laterally, and we have two, we have a 4-foot request and a 5-foot request. So what is the board's pleasure? For 1 foot, it's okay.
If he's willing to go 4 feet, I would think that would be sufficient.
Okay, Howard, was 5 feet? What do you think, Neil?
Well, I felt that 4 feet was what he was able to do from what he represented.
Right, okay, and Howard, you just...
I can live with that.
Okay, 4 feet, I'm happy that it comes a little off.
I get paid
out of the setback.
$5,000 like Mr. Woods, so I'll live with that.
Well, I'm getting $15 an hour, so look out.
All right, well, I think
That's your wife.
that 4 feet, we'll ask for him to move the building laterally 4 feet over out of concern for the neighbors, the impact of the snow and possibly any root effect or water effect. And we've asked that, we discussed installing gutters, that he asked to install gutters, and with the if he moves it over 4 feet, is that something that we feel should still be required?
Yeah.
That's a technical question.
If the issue of we can also get the building inspector's input on this, but I would think the overarching issue would be a redirection of any additional runoff that's created by the roof to, whatever criteria is needed, be it gutters or swales or, whatever appropriate mechanism is required to redirect any additional runoff. Mr. Murphy? You?
Okay,
If I may ask the applicant a question. In relation to that sideline, what's the elevation difference, or is that?
I think it's fairly even, except for the rock wall.
Okay. So there isn't like a slight rise that drops down? Because I know a lot of times pine trees will raise the surrounding area a little bit. I was wondering if that was the
But the
case.
pine trees don't start until after, like behind the
Oh,
barn.
okay. So they're not really part and parcel of that.
Not in this particular stretch of line.
It would seem to me that, as far as the gutter issue is concerned, that a gravel line trench would serve the same purpose. As we know, gutters are kind of a liability in the winter.
It's kind of hard to
Dug
keep,
down and gravelled it, it would at least keep the water from splashing all over everything, directed into the area to which he wants it to go.
Okay.
It's also kind of hard to heat gutters on a roof with its metal roof, so.
Right, it's a metal roof. So, okay, well, so why don't we ask for a gravel line trench to redirect the runoff. That ties into the, just a drainage plan that's approved by our code enforcement officer. If the applicant would work with our code enforcement officer on that. And the lighting, motion detector, down lighting, restriction to work, the approval is restricted to workshop area and storage, no plumbing, and a foundation with piers or on piers or poles. Is that it?
And no future expansion or change in use without, and that's boilerplate, but it's always good to get it on there,
Right.
without another trip before the ZBA.
Right, and that's it. To the applicant, I just explained, Mr. Markley, when we approve a special exception, it's for specific purposes, and our board's trying to be better about articulating all those reasons in our notice of decision, so that we know exactly what we approved, and future boards will know that. And if you would like to change or expand that use of your barn in the future, you would just need to come to the ZBA again and explain that and request the appropriate exception for that expansion, okay? Okay, so we want to include just that no expansion, future expansion of use before, without approval from the ZBA. Okay. All right. I think
Can you read through those before we make a motion?
Okay. Our conditions are to move the building laterally over 4 feet, to include a gravel line trench to redirect the runoff, to include downlighting and a motion detector on limited time. A workshop, the use is approved for workshop area and storage. There will be no plumbing, and the foundation will be on piers or poles, and the acceptable drainage plan will be included.
Okay. And what,
So,
and Sharon, what Sharon said?
Just the non-expansion
oh,
or
right,
change.
I'm sorry, right, and there is no future expansion of the use without approval of ZBA.
Okay, I make a motion that we accept the
Point of order,
condition.
Madam Chair.
Yes?
If we're dotting all the Ts, you better throw garage in there in the proposed use.
Okay, workshop slash
It's a
garage.
garage with storage,
Right.
and
Well, and it's a
you're
workshop
enumerating them, then
Right.
otherwise, somebody could look and
use.
watch the tape and say, okay, enumerated uses, it never said garage.
Yeah, we never referred to it as a
You
garage
kind of
because
placed
it's
by your own diligence in this one.
Right, okay, well, thank you, Mr. Murphy. We'll add garage to that workshop area slash garage and storage. Okay, so Mr. Bowden, you
I
are,
make a motion that we accept the
To approve the special exception with
approve the
conditions
special
as noted.
Conditions as noted.
with conditions, okay.
Second motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Neil, did you vote?
Aye.
Oh, okay.
I was writing something.
Sorry about that. Okay, so that's unanimous vote in favor of accepting the special exception with the conditions as noted. All right. And again, I appreciate Mr. Rockley's willingness to work and change things around a little bit to assist his neighbors and alleviate his neighbors' concerns. So thank you. Okay. You know what, to the board, I think what we should add to our findings of fact, that the barn will also, the barn is intended for use as a garage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully Sharon can make
Oh, that was pretty good, pretty thorough.
heads or tails out of that. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's patience through this, and hopefully as time goes on, we'll get a little smoother.
Well, you haven't, the board hasn't had much opportunity
option enough to
to
do it.
grease the wheels here, so, right.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of technical
Yeah,
requirements.
you are adjudicative, so it's
Yeah.
a little scary.
Okay, well, now where's the rest of our agenda here?
I do have, did you folks,
I looked through
in
that.
previous, you have your copy?
Yes.
Boy,
Our ZBA protocol.
pass that down. Do you want another copy just to look along here? Patrice, you probably have a copy, but I... No, okay, there you go. Yep.
Now, that is something, isn't that on our agenda?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
It
okay.
is,
It is public hearing, unfinished business.
Yeah, the next item.
Okay, great. All right, so we have these are the rules of procedure that we hammered out.
Five alternate members.
that's
Where are you gonna find
the
it?
ultimate. That's what the statute allows.
Right, and now I had asked Brian what he thought, and if we should, Sharon, the Building Code Board of Appeals, should that be a separate document? Should we make up a separate document for that? Because there's a few differences.
It probably wouldn't hurt just to address the differences and to have that, I mean, in my opinion, and this is just an opinion, you know, if something like that were to occur, I always go to the RSAs that strictly address that, just so we don't miss anything. So if we had a separate document attached to that, I think it would be cleaner.
Okay, that's what I wondered, because, and everybody realizes, I mean, did the selectmen actually appoint the ZBA to be the board, Building Code Board of Appeals?
We are, well, yes, you are.
Okay.
You are,
It was
except,
done by
you know,
Darren
right,
Arnold.
and that would be an when it's I can't even talk, when it is an administrative appeal, it's a little alliteration there, you know, it's slightly different. I mean, that's what Brian says now, as the zoning officer, and they make the appeal to the board. But no, we are duly appointed. There is not a separate standing board for...
Right, that's what okay, so basically, we're it. And that's why I wasn't sure if, you know, what the board felt, if we should just strike the Building Code Board of Appeals and do a separate document, or just keep it like this, and these would be the general rules of procedure if we ever have an appeal that we have to look at for the building code.
Well, I think we should keep it because the building court enforcement officers always at the meetings, so
Right. Okay, so, but, and he is actually
he's our special.
an appeal. Right, he's our technical advisor.
Right.
But I mean, if, say he denies something, and then that appeal, Brian, if you deny something, the appeal comes to us.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I'm just trying to figure out if we need the separate rules of procedure for that purpose.
The RS...
Because it's either one or two things.
Right.
No,
I speak out of turn,
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, since we're all kind of informal. That's always been the question with the ZBA, is it's the Board of Appeals, so you have to appeal something.
Right.
If the applicant recognizes that he's in violation, and, I mean, he's appealing the zoning ordinance. If it's an interpretation on my part, then that's an appeal of administrative decision.
Okay.
You know, and, or this particular case was actually a parallel thing, because I told him flat out, and his building permit is down there, and I said, I can't sign this until you seek relief at the ZBA. So, yes, it's always one or the other, you know, and the end result is the same. I don't think there's any fault of law by an applicant coming in, because all they would have to do to appeal a decision, there's nothing in there that states that it has to be formal or in writing or anything. If I just said, no, because you're violating X, oh, how do I go about doing that? So it's all kind of, one of these things. I don't think I think for clarity, we should keep the paperwork as simple as possible.
Okay.
There might be a checkbox as to how did you come before the ZBA. But essentially, it would fall into either the area variance, the regular variance, or a special exception, which could all be umbrellaed under appeal of the administrative decision. Now, some argue, and this has gone on for years, that the administrative decisions were made with the adoption of the zoning ordinance, in broad strokes. So that allows the applicant to self-do it, as long as he checks with us to make sure that, yes, he is in violation. You don't want to appeal something you don't have to.
Right.
So, that's one of those murky things, and I've always had kind of a problem with that. Before I was a building inspector and I was just the zoning enforcement officer, the Board of Selectmen, and you remember this, would turn down a building permit with my recommendation. So actually, the applicant would be appealing the BOS decision. So now I'm in a position where I can make that decision.
Right.
Under the
because now
rages,
you're
of
building
course.
protocols.
Right, with all the attendants, hoorah. So, the paperwork as it stands and the way it runs as it stands, it's pretty well stood the test of time throughout the state. And I know that great minds are thinking about it all the time. And there's really no way to cut through to the chase and make it any clearer than it is, because it has to cover every eventuality.
Right.
So,
Okay, well, thank you, then I guess we'll just keep it with this, and we can move to...
We have found it more effective to deal with a crisis as it occurs rather than to try to plan for every crisis, because then we can't even administrate our own stuff, so.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the Town of Plymouth Zoning Board of Adjustment / Building Code Board of Appeals Rules of Procedure.
I move we approve this rules of procedure.
Okay, thank you, Freeman.
Second.
And Howard. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair, that was unanimous.
Unanimous vote? Okay, now new business.
Just paperwork. Your gratuity for serving graciously as volunteers on the Zoning Board of Adjustment is your own personal copy of the handbook. And all facetiousness aside, this document is absolutely wonderful. It does list just about everything in it. So feel free to read yourself to sleep with it. I refer to it all the time because it is quite ponderous. You're welcome. Does anyone need another copy of our schedule? I know we haven't met due to lack of any items on agenda, but if you need another copy, if you've lost it or whatever, hasn't changed. Everybody's good? That's correct, yep. We had made some corrections to the zone, clerical corrections, just Scrivener's errors that we caught up on to the zoning ordinance. So I guess I'll just ask everybody to take...
Are they pages?
The pages, oh, did I, oh, okay, here it is. The reason that had a paper clip on it. So, everybody, that just goes right in your zoning books. And here, and some of these, like I said, were just, it's nothing of any substance. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Page 16, I'm missing one, so Patrice, I guess I'll get that to you. I'm sorry, I must have overdone it at another meeting. Oh, no, here's an extra. 16, okay, here we go. And,
No.
no, in your zoning ordinance, which, if you like, there's certainly, yeah, we can share it, it's in here. It's in here.
in the packet you handed out.
Oh, it is, okay, all right, I wasn't, okay, good. Okay, it's been a long time since we looked at these. Actually, you might, if you want to three-hole punch those or something, everything fits in the binder. Now, had anyone, this is more for the planning board, but was anyone interested in site plan regs or subdivision regs for increase your wealth of knowledge?
One copy or...
Yep. And these are the most recently updated, one of each. Anyone else?
Right, you know, I had a question about,
Thank you.
I mean, with somebody, we shouldn't have referred Mr. Mockley to the planning board for anything, should we?
No.
Okay.
No, because it's just a residential. No, he doesn't, that doesn't come under site plan review. Brian will oversee any of the implementation. And last but not least, and again, if you're inclined to go to this, this is the Local Government Center's fundamentals for planning boards and ZBAs, Saturday, October 29th. And the planning budget will pay for it. If you do go, if more than one of you go, I'd really appreciate it if you carpooled, because we will pay mileage, but not if everybody drives separately in a row. So just let me know, send me an email or anything.
Okay, well, just, I was going to tell you that I went to these 3 seminars in Meredith, which were excellent at the local government center on different things. And the last one was home occupations, accessory uses. And the thing that they hammered home was to make sure you put as many details as possible in your conditions of approval and findings, paperwork. So I'm glad that we did that, and we'll try to do it more succinctly next time.
Unfortunately, the way that our definition is written in our zoning ordinance, it's allowed by right in all zones.
Yeah, they're all different.
Are these to be,
What do you mean by that, Brian?
Or
you going to take them home?
Yeah.
Say you've got a woodworking shop in your garage.
Oh,
There are certain things that you can do and can't do, and you can't have employees.
Okay.
Keep them as a
You can't have a tea room. But, it has to be smaller than a certain percentage of your residence. It has to be tied to a residence. You're allowed whatever sign is legal in that zone. Actually, reading through it and comparing with other towns, we're very much in there. There's some towns that add more stuff to it. We've never seen really an issue come before any of the boards concerning that. Most because, like I said, they're wood shops or they're small engine repair. They don't generate any noise that's you can hear from the street, things like that. So we have it fairly well covered, though, being Plymouth residents, we can always find a way around it,
New Hampshire.
you allow signs in the single-family residential?
Yes, 6 square feet, about the size of the real estate sign, and that's subject to permit.
Right. Well,
Sort of like Hundle Studio?
a lot of the examples they gave were of these expanded uses, where somebody starts with a small business, or they ask for storage, and then the next thing you know, it's this big, gigantic truck with a refrigerator truck and things. So that's why it's good to just try to put whatever restrictions and articulate.
Or they have a storage trailer on their property or something like that.
If it's registered, though, they might be able to get away with it.
Don't give anybody any ideas, please. Thank you.
I think the others are all registered.
Anyway, now what's on the last on our agenda?
Well, our favorite point in the evening, adjournment.
Adjournment. Anybody?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Howard?
Second.
Okay, Freeman, thank you. All in favor?
Great meeting.
Thank you very much. That went well.